She died surrounded by family, yet the man holding her hand was a stranger to all of them. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. But when the nurse revealed who he truly was, and the letter she left behind was finally read, silence fell across the room like a thunderclap. No one expected the quiet man by the bed to change everything. My name is David Brooks. I was Anna Whitmore's husband for 7 years. And until the moment she died, her family had never even heard my name. Not because she was ashamed of me, but because she knew exactly what they would say the moment they saw my skin. We built a life in the shadows of her silence. We loved in the quiet spaces her family never cared to look into. And when the time came, I was the one she asked for her final wish. Her last breath, her truth. This is not a story about race. It's not even a story about death. It's a story about love, kept secret, misunderstood, and finally revealed. Have you ever loved someone the world told you to hide? Would you forgive your child for never introducing you to the person they married? Or would you turn away like they never existed? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to EN True Tales. Because some stories only come out when it's too late. I met Anna at a technology summit in Seattle. She was sharp, fast-talking, the kind of woman who looked you straight in the eye when she disagreed. And I loved that. She had questions about the startup I worked for. I had questions about the nonprofit she ran on weekends. We kept talking even after the panel ended. Lunch turned into coffee, coffee turned into a 4-hour walk through Pike Place. And by the time we reached the pier, I knew she wasn't like anyone I'd ever met. And she said the same about me. I'm a software architect, grew up in Detroit. Nothing fancy, public school, single mom chess tournaments on Saturdays, and ramen for dinner more times than I can count. Anna came from another world, Ivy League degree, East Coast bloodline. Her family name was on library wings and scholarships. They were, as she once put it, old money pretending to be humble. The first time she visited my place, she kicked off her heels, pulled her hair into a bun, and said, "Thank God I can finally breathe." That's how it was with us. Easy. So when we got married 2 years later in a courthouse downtown, just us two friends and a justice of the peace, it didn't feel like a rebellion. It felt like peace. She wore a soft blue dress. I wore the suit I'd saved for interviews. She laughed when I dropped the ring. I cried when she said I do. We went home that night and made grilled cheese while watching bad reality TV. And she said this is better than a ballroom full of people who don't know us. I believed her. But the truth was, Anna never really gave them the chance to know me. It started small. She didn't tell them she was dating anyone. Then it became, I don't want to bring someone home until I'm sure. Then they're not ready, then it's not the right time after the wedding, I asked her gently. Should we tell them? She looked away. Not yet, I pressed once more. Just once. She squeezed my hand and said, David, they won't see you. Not the way I do. I just want to protect what we have a little longer. And I believe that too, because the way she loved me in private was undeniable. She woke up early just to iron my shirts, left notes in my bag before meetings, memorized my coffee order, and recited it like a spell. And every Sunday she'd put on her favorite vinyls and dance barefoot in the kitchen while I cooked. In those moments we weren't hiding, but every Thanksgiving she'd pack a suitcase, kiss me goodbye, and say, next year, I promise. And every Christmas I made soup and waited for her to come home with that tired, practiced smile. She never said it out loud, but I knew she wasn't ashamed of me. She was ashamed of how little her family would try to understand me. She grew up in a world of quiet prejudices, the kind you don't say directly, but still live in every rule. Like we don't talk politics at the table, or it's just tradition. Or worse, it's not personal. So I let her keep the silence for a while, because she loved me in every other way. And I thought maybe one day, that would be enough until she got sick. A year before the hospital room, before the priest, before the whispers and narrowed eyes, Anna came home, pale, eyes glassy, clutching a folder she tried to hide in her purse. I knew she cried in my arms for an hour. Then she said, if I don't make it, I want you there. I don't care what they think. I want you there. And I told her what I'd been waiting to say for years. You don't need their permission to love me. You never did. She smiled, kissed me twice like she always did before bed, and said, then we'll do it our way. Anna started treatment quietly. No big announcements, no teary group chats, just me and her. and the calendar on our fridge that slowly filled with appointments. She didn't want her parents to know. "Not yet. Let's get through the first round," she said. "Then, maybe I'll tell them." But after the first round, she lost her hair, and after the second, she could barely hold a fork. She still smiled, though she always smiled for me. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and find her sitting by the window. Wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the city lights, I'd sit beside her, and she'd say, "Do you think they'd come if I called them?" I never answered, because I didn't know what hurt more, the question, or that she was still waiting for an answer. The truth was, they didn't even know she was sick, and she didn't want them to know. Not because she hated them, but because she knew exactly what they'd do. Show up too late, offer polite sympathy, try to take control. That wasn't what she needed, so we kept it. Just us. Every chemo session I was there, holding her hand, joking about hospital food, bringing her playlists and tiny origami animals folded from napkins. She said I made the sterile rooms feel like home. But some days, even I couldn't make the pain feel bearable, like the day she collapsed in the shower. I found her crumpled on the tile, blood in the corner of her mouth, whispering my name like it was the only word she remembered. We spent the night in the ER. I never left her side. The nurse assumed I was her brother. When I corrected her husband, she blinked, then smiled softly and said, "You're a good man." That moment stuck with me because outside our little world, people always had to guess what I was to her. A friend, a caretaker, a +1. Never just her husband, and I had let that happen for years. Not because I didn't want to be known, but because I didn't want to force Anna to choose between the family she came from and the love we built. One night, as I helped her brush her teeth, she looked at me in the mirror and said, "I'm tired of hiding." I turned her, gently kissed her forehead, and said, "Then stop." She drafted a new medical directive, listing me as next of kin, updated her emergency contact forms, and tucked a manila folder beneath the bed with every document that proved what we had always been. Real. Legal, undeniable. A month later, she suggested we marry again. Properly, she said, with white lace, a vow renewal. By the lake where we'd spent our first anniversary, it was just us. Again, but this time, she wore a veil. I wore a boutonniere. She cried as she said, "You made these years feel like magic," and I cried too. Because I knew what she wasn't saying. She was preparing for goodbye. On the way back, she said, "I don't care what my mother thinks anymore. When I go, you'll be there, and they'll finally see." I nodded, holding her hand tight. But deep down I wondered, would they? Would they see what we had, or just stare through me like I didn't belong? The answer came sooner than I thought. 3 weeks later, Anna was readmitted. Her lungs had filled with fluid. She slipped into unconsciousness that night and never fully came back. The hospital called her family. They flew in the next morning, tight-lipped, grief-stricken, confused. They barely looked at me. Her mother, Ellen, sat ramrod straight in the corner of the room, pearls around her neck like armor. Her father, Robert, paced by the window, arms folded, face pale. Her sister, Emily, was the only one who offered me a polite nod. The rest... silence. I stayed in the chair beside the bed, day and night, holding Anna's hand, whispering memories into the space between us. They watched, whispered, avoided eye contact. I overheard one of the cousins murmur, "He must have been a friend." Poor guy. I didn't correct them. I didn't need to. Because Anna knew every time I touched her hand, I remembered the way she danced barefoot in our kitchen. Every time I adjusted her blanket, I thought of the nights she whispered, "You make me feel safe." And every time her mother cleared her throat or gave me a pointed glance, I stayed silent. Because I had already won, I had been loved, fully, bravely. And when the priest came in for the final blessing and her mother said, "He can wait outside," I didn't move, I didn't flinch, because I knew what was coming. And when the nurse gently placed a hand on the priest's shoulder and said, "She asked for him to be here. He's her husband, it's in the file." The whole room went still, Ellen's mouth parted, but no words came. I reached into my coat, unfolded the marriage license, held it to the light, and the sun caught the ring still on Anna's hand. They had never seen it before, but it had been there all along. The priest's voice broke the silence. "Would you like to join in the blessing?" He was looking at me this time. I nodded. "She believed in grace," I said. "Let's give her that." The prayer began. Ellen stood stiff at the foot of the bed, her arms crossed so tightly it looked like her bones might snap. Her lips pressed thin, her eyes locked on the floor. She never said a word. I didn't care. I wasn't praying for her. I was praying for Anna. For the love we built, for the years we had. For the strength she gave me when I didn't think I had any left. And when the priest finished, I leaned forward and whispered into her ear, "You did it. You held your line. You made your choice." I kissed her forehead one last time. Her skin was cold, but her ring, still warm from the sun, she was gone by nightfall. The funeral was held under a cloudy afternoon sky, gray windless. Like the world had exhaled and decided not to breathe again. I stood alone at the edge of the service, not by choice, but because every other space had already been claimed by silence. Her parents hovered near the casket. Old friends murmured soft condolences, but no one spoke to me. Not directly. Emily gave me a sad glance. She seemed different. Quieter, but even she kept her distance. I didn't expect anything else. I laid white peonies at the headstone, simple, elegant. Just like she would have wanted no elaborate carvings, no poetic quotes. Just her name, the years of her life, and one line beneath them, "Loved deeply." "Always returned," I whispered. I made it to the bench. "Anna, your name's still carved there." The waves were loud that day, but I swear I heard your laugh in them. Then I sat down on the grass and let the world fall quiet again. Back at the Whitmore estate, things were as brittle as ever. Polished wood, quiet rooms, a fireplace that hadn't been lit in months. Emily wandered into Anna's old study. She wasn't looking for anything, just touching what her sister once touched. Books, scarves, old photo frames. Then she saw it. A cream envelope resting atop a weathered blue journal, "To my family, read after I'm gone." She froze, took a breath, then carried it into the sitting room. Her parents were there. Ellen seated on the edge of the couch, Robert nursing a cold cup of tea like it might hold answers. Emily's voice was small. "Anna left us something." No one replied. She broke the seal, her hands trembled. And then she read, "If you're holding this, I'm already gone. I debated writing this, but there are things I couldn't say while I was alive. And now, I have nothing left to lose." You never knew David. Not really, but I did. I knew every part of him. The way he steadied me when I was afraid. The way he listened without judgment. The way he made me feel safe in a world that told us we were a mistake. Ellen stiffened. Robert looked away. Emily's voice wavered, but she kept going. "You always thought I kept him away out of shame. That's not true. I kept him away because I was trying to protect him. From your judgment, from your whispers, from your polite smiles that never touched your eyes. I didn't want the man I loved to be treated like less than he is." Emily paused. The silence was like a second funeral. Then she read the rest. "I was diagnosed a year ago. I didn't tell you because I knew what would follow. Drama control, cold comforts. Instead, I made a different choice. David and I were married again. In the little chapel near the lake, just the two of us. I wore white." He cried. "It was the happiest day of my life, even though I knew it would be one of my last. You may think he wasn't family, but he was my only real family in the end. So if you still believe he was a mistake, that's fine. But know this. My final wish was to be held by him as I left this world, and he gave me that, even knowing what he'd face when I was gone. Please, let go of your pride. It's too late for me, but not for you. Love, Anna." Ellen didn't speak. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Robert took off his glasses and wiped them, though they were already clean. It was the first time anyone had seen tears in his eyes in decades. Emily folded the letter carefully, placed it back on the table, and left the room. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Upstairs in Anna's old room, the blue journal waited beside a photo album. And in a quiet apartment across town, I sat alone on our couch. Her scarf still hung from the back of the chair. Her lotion still lingered faintly in the air. I didn't know they'd read the letter, but I didn't need to, because I had lived every word of it. The cemetery was almost empty when I returned. The sky had cleared, but the air still held that soft, muted stillness that comes after rain, the kind of silence that feels like a held breath. I walked slowly along the gravel path, a bouquet of fresh white peonies in my hand. Not in mourning exactly, but something quieter. Something deeper. Anna's headstone stood beneath an old elm tree, simple, unadorned. Just the way she wanted it, I knelt beside it, brushed away a few fallen leaves with my palm, and laid the peonies down with care. Then I sat back on my heels and let the quiet gather around me. "Hey," I said softly. I finally went back to the beach, the one where we spent our first anniversary. The one place you said you could breathe. Your name's still carved into the bench. I sat there for a while. Remembered the way you laughed when I said the water was too cold and you dove in anyway. I smiled at the memory, then lowered my head. "They didn't have to know me," I whispered. "You did." That was enough. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out one of the only photos we ever printed, Anna in a straw hat. Me squinting at the sun, both of us mid-laugh. She'd insisted on having it framed. "No filters," she said. "Just us, messy and real." I placed it gently beside the flowers, weighed it down with a smooth stone. The wind picked up, then tugged at my collar, carried the smell of grass and something older, like cedar and salt. Behind me a car door clicked shut. I didn't turn around, but I heard footsteps stop at a respectful distance. Then a woman's voice, soft and surprised, "Dad." "No, nothing's wrong." A pause. I wanted to tell you, I love you." I glanced sideways. A young nurse, she'd worked in Anna's unit. She hadn't seen me at the funeral, hadn't said anything that day. But now she stood there, hand to her heart, watching. Not with pity, with recognition. That moment held longer than it should have. Then I rose, brushed the dirt from my knees, gave the sky a nod as if to someone standing just beside me, and walked away, slow, steady each step, carrying the weight of love and something close to peace. I never heard from her family again. No phone call, no apology, no olive branch. And that was okay, because Anna had already done the one thing they never could. She had seen me, all of me, not as a guest, not as a mistake, not as a stranger with the wrong skin in the wrong place, but as her person, her husband, her future, her last breath. That was all I ever needed. Sometimes I wonder if Ellen ever rereads that letter, if Robert ever goes into her study and opens the old journal, if Emily ever returns to the beach and finds our bench. I don't know. I don't need to know, because Anna's truth didn't need their validation. It was carved in every moment we lived together, in the silent strength of her last choice, in the ring she refused to remove, in the manila folder she hid just beneath the bed. She never stopped protecting me. And in the end, she made sure they saw what they tried so hard not to, that I was never the outsider. I was always the one who stayed. So I keep living quietly, intentionally. I still make her favorite soup every Christmas Eve. I still play her records on Sunday mornings. And every year on the day we married twice, I go back to the chapel, leave flowers at the lake, sit on the bench, and I whisper, "We were never wrong." I used to think silence was love's enemy, that hiding something meant it didn't matter, that if the world didn't witness your love, then maybe it wasn't real. But Anna taught me something else entirely. She taught me that love doesn't always need a stage. Sometimes it grows in the shadows, not because it's ashamed, but because the world hasn't earned the right to see it yet. She didn't keep me a secret out of guilt. She kept me safe from their judgment, from their narrowed eyes, from being reduced to a statement or an act of rebellion. She knew them better than I did, and she knew what they'd try to do with our story. Turn it into a debate, an embarrassment, a cautionary tale whispered at holidays behind clenched jaws. So she made a choice. She loved me loudly in private. And then when it mattered most, she made that love undeniable. In the end, she didn't just leave behind memories. She left proof, documents, signatures, a marriage license, and a letter they'll never be able to forget. She wrote it not to hurt them, but to finally say the one thing they refused to hear from her while she was alive. That love isn't a performance, it's a commitment that doesn't owe anyone an explanation. And now, it's my turn to speak to anyone listening right now, especially if you've ever felt like Anna. If you've ever had to choose between love and approval, between truth and comfort, between your heart and your history, I hope this story reminds you, love doesn't need permission, it needs courage, it needs honesty. And yes, sometimes it needs silence, but only until it's strong enough to speak for itself. Anna gave me that strength. She used her final breath to tell the truth. Not for applause, not for reconciliation, but for peace. Her peace and mine, I think about her sometimes, in the smallest moments, when I pass by the Thai place she loved, when the weather turns and she's not there to say Jacket David, when I hear a song she used to hum while folding laundry. And I realize she's still here in everything, not because I've clung to her memory, but because she etched herself into the rhythm of my life. She didn't just love me, she claimed me. And in doing so, she left a mark. No one else could erase, not even her family. I don't know what happened to the letter after Emily read it. Maybe Ellen burned it. Maybe Robert pretended it never existed. Or maybe just maybe they've read it again in the quiet when no one else is watching. And maybe they've come to understand that it wasn't the color of my skin that kept me out of their lives. It was the smallness of their hearts. And maybe they're learning too late that love doesn't knock politely on the front door. Sometimes, it builds a home without their blessing. As for me, I go on. Not because I've moved on, but because Anna wouldn't want her love to be a weight. She'd want it to be wind, to be breath, to be music in the background of a life still unfolding. So I live, I work, I volunteer at the cancer center. Sometimes I speak to the partners of patients who are scared, tired, and pretending to be strong. And I tell them you don't need to be loud, just don't disappear. That was Anna's lesson. She never screamed for recognition. She simply refused to vanish. And maybe that's the point of all this. Maybe we spend too much time trying to be seen, trying to prove our love is worthy or valid or enough. But love doesn't need validation. It just needs to show up every day in the kitchen, at the hospital, by the bed, at the grave. It needs to show up, even when no one claps for it, even when no one says your name. So if you're listening now and there's someone in your life that you've been afraid to claim, don't wait. You don't need a perfect moment. You don't need a family's blessing. You don't even need their understanding. You just need one voice that says, I'm not hiding anymore. And if you're on the other side, a parent, a sibling, a friend, who's holding on to pride more tightly than love, let go. Because by the time you finally understand what was lost, it might already be too late. What did you think of Anna's story? Was she wrong for keeping David a secret, or brave for protecting the love that saved her life? Some people spend years chasing approval from people who will never give it. Others choose peace, quiet, defiant, peace. Anna chose love, not for the world, not for applause, but for herself. And in the end, that's what mattered. She didn't need her family's permission. She didn't need their validation. She just needed to be held by the man who knew her. Not the version they preferred, but the one she truly was. If you were in David's place, would you have stayed if you were Anna? Would you have chosen to reveal the truth sooner? Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Vote number 5. If you believe love doesn't need to be announced to be real. Vote number 9. If you think secrets, even those meant to protect, can still leave scars. And if this story moved you even a little, don't scroll past, hit that subscribe button, so you never miss another tale. From EN True Tales, because sometimes the quietest stories leave the loudest echoes.